The darkest hour comes just before dawn. In a garden outside Jerusalem's walls, dew gathers on leaves and spider webs. The air is perfectly still. A sealed tomb sits silently, guarded by Roman soldiers fighting off sleep after a long, uneventful night. Inside that tomb, wrapped in burial linens and surrounded by 75 pounds of burial spices, the body of Jesus of Nazareth has lain motionless for 36 hours. His followers remain hidden behind locked doors, broken in spirit, their hopes crushed. The women who loved him wait only for first light to complete his burial, a final act of devotion before moving on to the bitter aftermath of shattered dreams. No one expects what is about to happen. No one is prepared for the impossible. Welcome to Easter Sunday, the day that changed everything, the cosmic hinge on which all history turns, the morning when death itself was conquered and hope reborn. Dawn approaches Jerusalem on the first day of the week, what we now call Sunday. The Sabbath restrictions that prevented activity the previous day have ended. The city still sleeps, though pilgrims who came for Passover will soon begin preparations for their journeys home. In the 3 years of Jesus' public ministry, he had repeatedly predicted both his death and his resurrection on the third day. But even his closest followers had never fully grasped what he meant. The concept of a dying and rising Messiah contradicted their expectations of political liberation. The trauma of his brutal execution had driven these predictions from their minds. The Jewish leaders, ironically, took Jesus' resurrection predictions more seriously, which is why they had secured the tomb with a Roman guard and an official seal. Any tampering would be immediately evident and severely punished. By Jewish reckoning, this Sunday morning marks the third day since Jesus' death. In their counting system, any part of a day counted as a day. So Friday, day of death, Saturday, full day, and Sunday, current day, fulfilled the 3 days prophecy. What unfolds over the next few hours will start as a quiet revelation to a handful of grief-stricken women, then gradually expand outward in waves of astonishment, skepticism, confirmation, and finally world-changing conviction. Before dawn, while the garden still lay in darkness, the most momentous event in human history occurred. Unseen by human eyes, unobserved by the guards outside, unwitnessed except by heavenly beings. Inside the sealed tomb, divine power surged through the lifeless body of Jesus. What happened in that moment transcends scientific explanation or human understanding. The gospel writers don't even attempt to describe the actual resurrection, only its aftermath. The Greek word used for resurrection, anastasis, means standing up, a concrete physical raising of the body, not merely a spiritual or symbolic rising. Yet Jesus' resurrection was not simply a resuscitation or return to normal human life, like Lazarus, who would eventually die again. This was transformation into a new mode of existence, a glorified body still bearing the wounds of crucifixion, yet no longer bound by normal physical limitations. While no human observed the resurrection itself, Matthew records that a violent earthquake accompanied it as an angel of the Lord descended from heaven, rolled back the stone and sat on it. The guards, facing the terrifying sight of this radiant being, became like dead men, paralyzed with fear or perhaps temporarily unconscious. By the time the first human witnesses arrived, the resurrection had already happened. The empty tomb and grave clothes they would discover were not the resurrection itself, but evidence of this cosmos-altering event. As the first gray light appeared on the horizon, a small group of women made their way through Jerusalem's quiet streets toward the garden tomb. They carried jars of burial spices and ointments prepared before the Sabbath to complete Jesus' burial, a final act of love and devotion. The group included Mary Magdalene, whom Jesus had freed from 7 demons, Mary the mother of James, Salome, Joanna, and likely others. As they walked, they worried aloud, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?" The massive disc-shaped stone, possibly weighing over a ton, was far beyond their strength to move. Arriving at the garden as the sun was rising, they saw something unexpected. The stone had already been rolled away from the tomb entrance. Mary Magdalene, seeing this, immediately jumped to a conclusion. Someone had taken Jesus' body. Without even investigating further, she turned and ran to tell Peter and John. The other women, however, entered the tomb. Instead of finding Jesus' body, they encountered a young man in white, described as an angel in Matthew's account, sitting where the body should have been. Terrified, they froze. "Don't be alarmed," he told them. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." Trembling, confused, and overwhelmed with a mixture of fear and joy, the women fled from the tomb. Initially, they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid, Mark 16:8, though Matthew notes they eventually ran to tell the disciples. The varied accounts in the four Gospels reflect the chaos and confusion of that morning, different groups of women coming and going, angels appearing and disappearing, reports spreading among the disciples. This very disorganization lends historical credibility to the accounts. Had the disciples fabricated the story later, they would likely have created a much neater, less complex narrative. Meanwhile, Mary Magdalene reached Peter and John with her alarming news. "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." The two disciples immediately raced toward the garden. John, younger and faster, arrived first but stopped at the entrance, peering inside. Peter, typically impulsive, rushed past him directly into the tomb. What they saw puzzled them. The linen burial cloths were still there, lying where the body had been. More strangely, the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up by itself, separate from the other wrappings. This arrangement contradicted Mary's theory of body theft. Grave robbers would either have taken the body wrapped in its valuable linen, or, if they removed the wrappings, would have left them in a disorganized pile. The careful arrangement suggested something else entirely, as if Jesus had simply passed through the burial clothes, leaving them collapsed in place, and then folded the head covering himself. John entered the tomb, observed this evidence, and in that moment belief blossomed. The Gospel records simply, "He saw and believed," though it adds that they still didn't fully understand the scriptural prophecies about resurrection. The two disciples, puzzled but with the first glimmers of hope, returned to where the others were staying. Mary Magdalene, however, remained at the tomb, about to experience an even more direct encounter. Mary stood outside the tomb, weeping. In her grief, she bent to look inside again and saw two angels in white sitting where Jesus' body had been. They asked why she was crying. "They have taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they have put him," she replied, still fixated on her assumption of body theft. Turning around, she saw someone she assumed was the gardener. Her eyes, perhaps blurred with tears, didn't recognize Jesus standing before her. "Woman, why are you crying?" he asked. "Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he might have moved the body, she pleaded, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Then Jesus said just one word, "Mary." The way he spoke her name, perhaps with the same inflection he'd used countless times during his ministry, instantly opened her eyes. "Rabboni, teacher," she cried, apparently moving to embrace him. "Do not hold on to me," Jesus said, "for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." This extraordinary honor, to be the first to see the risen Christ, was given not to Peter or John or James, not to religious authorities or political leaders, but to a woman with a troubled past whom Jesus had healed. Her testimony would be deemed legally worthless in first-century Jewish society, yet God chose her as the primary witness to history's pivotal event. Mary ran to the disciples with her astonishing news, "I have seen the Lord." But despite the empty tomb and her testimony, most remained skeptical, hidden behind locked doors for fear of the Jewish leaders. Later that same day, two disciples were walking from Jerusalem to the village of Emmaus, about 7 miles away. One was named Cleopas, the other remains unnamed. As they walked, they discussed the bewildering events of the past few days. Jesus himself approached and began walking with them, but they were kept from recognizing him, perhaps by divine intervention or simply by their own preconceptions that he was dead. "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" Jesus asked. They stopped, looking downcast. "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" Cleopas replied. "What things?" Jesus asked, drawing them out. They explained about Jesus of Nazareth, a prophet, powerful in word and deed, whom they had hoped would redeem Israel, but who had been crucified. Then they added the puzzling latest development. "Some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive." Jesus responded with gentle rebuke. "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" Beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself, probably highlighting passages like Psalm 22 describing crucifixion, Isaiah 53, the suffering servant, and other messianic prophecies that pointed to a suffering Messiah, not merely a conquering king. Reaching Emmaus as evening approached, they urged this fascinating stranger to stay with them. At the table, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to them, the same actions he had performed at the Last Supper. Suddenly, their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and in that moment he disappeared from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" Despite the late hour, they immediately returned to Jerusalem to tell the others. That evening, most of the disciples had gathered behind locked doors, still fearful of the authorities. The two from Emmaus had just arrived with their remarkable story when suddenly, despite the locked doors, Jesus himself stood among them. "Peace be with you," he said, an ordinary greeting made extraordinary by the circumstances. Terrified, they thought they were seeing a ghost. Jesus reassured them. "Why are you troubled, and why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." To further prove his physical reality, he asked for food. They gave him a piece of broiled fish, which he ate in their presence, demonstrating that his resurrection was bodily and real, not merely spiritual or visionary. Then Jesus opened their minds to understand the scriptures, showing how everything written about him in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms had been fulfilled. "This is what is written," he explained. "The Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day, and repentance for the forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things." Thomas, one of the 12, was not present for this appearance. When told about it later, he famously declared, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, Jesus appeared again when Thomas was present. "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe," Jesus invited. Thomas's response became one of the most profound confessions in Scripture, "My Lord and my God." Jesus then said something meant not just for Thomas, but for all future generations. "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Easter Sunday stands as the supreme moment of vindication and victory. In that garden tomb, death met its match. The seemingly invincible powers of darkness, hatred, violence, and the grave itself discovered their limitations. The resurrection declares with cosmic authority that love is stronger than hatred, that life overcomes death, that the final word in this universe belongs not to chaos, but to redemptive purpose. The empty tomb confronts us with a decision no human can escape. As C.S. Lewis observed, either Jesus was history's greatest deceiver, a lunatic with delusions of grandeur, or exactly who he claimed to be, God incarnate. The resurrection is not a comforting metaphor or inspiring myth tacked onto the real story of a good moral teacher. It stands as the central claim of Christianity, the event that gives meaning to everything else. Without it, as Paul would later write, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. The Easter accounts bear striking marks of authenticity. If the disciples had fabricated the story, they would never have made women the primary witnesses. Their testimony was legally inadmissible in that culture, nor would they have portrayed themselves as confused, doubtful, and slow to believe. The very messiness of these accounts, with people running back and forth between tomb and upper room, reports conflicting and recognition delayed, carries the unmistakable texture of genuine historical memory rather than calculated fiction. Most compelling is how the resurrection transformed Jesus' followers. These men and women who abandoned him at his arrest and hid behind locked doors after his death would, within weeks, boldly proclaim him in the very city where he was executed. Within a generation, many would face torture and execution rather than deny what they had witnessed. People might die for what they mistakenly believed to be true, but who would die for what they knew to be a fabrication? The implications reach beyond theology into the heart of human existence. If Jesus truly conquered death, then our deepest intuitions, that love matters, that justice should eventually prevail, that beauty points beyond itself, aren't delusions, but align with reality's fundamental nature. Easter declares that the universe is not indifferent matter swirling in meaningless patterns, but the creation of a God who enters our suffering, defeats our enemies, and promises restoration beyond our imagining. The resurrection redefines power itself. The true king conquered not through political domination or military might, but through apparent defeat and surrender. Victory came not by inflicting suffering, but by absorbing it. This weakness of God proved stronger than human strength, revealing a divine power that transforms the world not through coercion, but through self-giving love that persists even when facing the worst humanity can inflict. As the first Easter Sunday drew to a close, the disciples gathered in the upper room, their confusion gradually giving way to astonished joy. The scattered reports, Mary's encounter in the garden, the mysterious stranger on the Emmaus road, Jesus' appearance in their midst began to coalesce into an extraordinary reality. Death had been defeated, the impossible had happened. Their beloved teacher lived again, yet questions remained. Thomas still doubted, having missed Jesus' appearance. How would this resurrection power manifest in their lives? What would it mean for Israel, for the nations, for the world? The answers would unfold in the coming days as the risen Christ continued to appear among them, teaching and preparing them for their world-changing mission. For 40 remarkable days, Jesus would walk among his followers, eating with them, instructing them, showing them his wounds, helping them understand the scriptures in light of his resurrection. Each appearance would further transform their understanding and strengthen their conviction. The frightened band hiding behind locked doors would gradually become the fearless witnesses who would soon turn the world upside down. Join us as we explore these post-resurrection appearances, from the shores of Galilee where Peter received restoration, to the mountain where Jesus gave his great commission, to the moment when, before their watching eyes, he ascended to the Father's right hand. The story that began in a garden tomb on Easter morning was just the first chapter of a revolution that continues to this day. The tomb stands empty, death's chains are shattered. On this resurrection morning, Psalm 16 bursts forth with prophetic fulfillment. Therefore my heart is glad and my tongue rejoices. My body also will rest secure, because you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead, nor will you let your faithful one see decay. When Peter preached at Pentecost, he pointed to these very words as a prophecy of Christ's resurrection. David, he explained, foreseeing this, spoke of the resurrection of the Christ, that he was not abandoned to Hades, nor did his flesh see corruption. The Psalm's confidence finds perfect fulfillment as death itself is defeated. You make known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. Today, this resurrection psalm invites us to embrace the path of life that Christ has opened. Whatever tombs of despair, addiction, broken relationships, or spiritual deadness we face, resurrection power is available. Christ is risen. The path of life stands open before us. In the words of Psalm 16, I say to the Lord, "You are my Lord. Apart from you I have no good thing."
Preserve me, O God, for in you I put my trust. Oh, my soul, you have said to the Lord, you are my Lord. My goodness is nothing apart from you. As for the saints who are on the earth, they are the excellent ones in whom is all my delight. Their sorrows shall be multiplied, who hasten after another God. Their drink offerings of blood I will not offer, nor take up their names on my lips. Oh Lord, you are the portion of my inheritance and my cup. You maintain my lot. The lines have fallen to me in pleasant places. Yes, I have a good inheritance. I will bless the Lord who has given me counsel. My heart also instructs me in the night seasons. I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand, I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad, and my glory rejoices. My flesh also will rest in hope. Will not leave my soul in Sheol, nor will you allow your Holy One to see corruption.